Our next presentation is learning about sustainability in Metaverse, and the presenters are Mr. D.Shen, Dr. Paulina Wong, and Ms. Ting. Mr. Shen is Director of Soqqle Hong Kong Limited, a social mobile learning technology company that aims to encourage more social mobile learning in educational institutions through the use of mobile technology. Dr. Wong is an assistant professor in the science unit at Lingnan University and center fellow of the Institute of Policy Studies. Besides specializing in urban climate, air or noise pollution, GIS, and environmental health, she also studies urban sensing, mobile geospatial technologies, sustainability education, and social policy. Ms. Ting is the Secretary General of Ningyi Social Work Service Center in Shopping Bar District, Chongqing. She has been engaged in environmental art and graphic design and often assists with the development of courses, competitions, and micro courses in many colleges and universities in Chongqing. Mr. Shen, Dr. Wong, and Mr. Ting, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear? Am I on mute? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm from Soqqle, Hong Kong. We are recently a science park incubator, and we collaborate with different education institutions in research, especially in different social learning technology solutions, like in this case, a Metaverse. And I'll share a bit more about that in shortly. So let me open up this thing a bit more. So Paulina is not able to make it today, so I'll be presenting in this session. So just a bit of summary. So we are a 3D virtual social environment focusing on idea generation, knowledge transfer within a 3D virtual space. And where does the Metaverse part come in? So that's one of the things that we'll cover in this session. So overall, as a summary, we are a pilot project to evaluate student perception, or how do they feel when they play in this open world immersive environment. Imagine that it's like a game where students run around, they engage with non-player characters, and they get to have dialogue. And I'll show how the application looks like in a bit. And all of this is in light of this need to increase engagement, especially during COVID. But more so, there are some subjects that require more authentic environments, something that's more realistic, something that is closer to real life. And a lot of teachers, they do case studies, right? And we want a more, maybe what's the next way of doing case studies instead of just pictures, videos. Videos are getting a little bit boring as well nowadays, and students have been watching a lot of videos, right? And most of the flipped classrooms are all videos. So in this study, most of the work has been around qualitative. It's a pilot study. We are planning to do more quantitative later on in the year. But before we do quantitative, we want to first understand how the students feel about this kind of environments. Is there a way to do it even better? Almost as a way of doing some form of validity checks to see whether this is something that they are used to. Overall, they find it quite interesting. They find it interesting. They like this experiential and also exploratory. They like to have this, running around to pick up new things, to have different varying content. And interestingly, some of them find it more relaxing. So relaxing is something that it depends on whether we want to have a certain level of that emotion in a classroom. But there are different ways that we can actually run through the Metaverse in this context. So number one, the first question that you might be wondering is the Metaverse a fad, right? Is there something that people are using to buy and sell land on Sandbox, and how is that even relevant to education? So there's a lot of content, a lot of research that's been done that shows virtual reality, game-based learning can create active learning. We have our own ways of doing active learning, which we will share as well. But there's some studies that show there's lesser learning outcomes, most likely because of the use of head-mounted virtual reality in some cases, especially if students start to sense or feel dizzy. And therefore, I think that was one of the correlations potentially that for the students who felt that they're not comfortable with that, or they feel lost in this 3D, very, very immersive environment. So with the Metaverse, there's a few things around that, mostly around open world content, the exploratory concept, but also a lot of Metaverse environments have author tools, so content authoring tools, teacher authoring tools in our case, and we can use those tools to create intelligent non-player characters. So this is something that we are using a lot more, and we're trying to do even more. So we do invite wider collaborations across different institutions, which is one of the objectives of Metaverse anyway, to create cross-institutional collaborations on the same scenes or similar scenes, and even have one institution share their scenes with other institutions so that we can have sharing of knowledge and content across different topics. So why now? COVID obviously shows the potential of using more blended learning tools. But a lot of us are using the same blended learning tools as we were before COVID. And even during COVID, there's some that, but it's just a small improvement, enhancement, and not much of a change. So there are some, there's studies that show the lack of engagement, especially online. Yes, now you can go, now with classes going back to in face-to-face, but there is still an opportunity to kind of bring them into an environment whereby maybe they cannot do in the classroom. For example, some subjects like sustainability might require more kind of understanding of different stakeholders in that scene, in the environment. You want to know more about how trash waste is being generated in a restaurant. You want to be in a restaurant. You don't just want to see pictures. You want to be in a restaurant. You want to interact with the owners. You want to interact with the kitchen staff. You want to understand how the waste is being collected and is being sent to dispose. So having those kind of environments is more beneficial to the students, but it's very hard for lecturers to simulate their environment in the classroom. Or even so, there are other subjects like, for example, digital literacy, internet safety, very hard to articulate, even harder to teach because sometimes the teachers may not actually know the content as well. So if we can actually deliver this content in a way which is more easier to teach, then perhaps that's where we can try to have more benefit to the teaching efficiency. So collaboration and role play. Role play is one of the bigger things, especially for some subjects like language learning, or even we have some other topics that we are working on, like economics as well. So we can have this role play environment whereby they can play buyer, seller roles. They can role play as maybe even language learning. They can role play as students who wants to speak, who wants to present some ideas or share about some issues. So that can be done as well. So overall, there's just two big problems that we want to solve in this method. So number one, we want to make engagement much easier. Students want more familiar engagement methods like social media. But there are some studies that show that social media is great, but there are some studies that show that the engagement is not really there. And some students find that there's a lack of purpose. They don't find, why is there a need for me to post things on social media? Especially in context for education, is perhaps useful for sharing administrative stuff, maybe adding a few comments here and there, but there's a lack of analytics as well to that point. And game-based methods are growing old. Right? You cannot do a Kahoot every single week, and it gets really old and boring after a while. And if you play, and a lot of these 3D games environments, they are often very much one-off. You play a game once, finish, and if you want to customize and change things, very hard. If you want to use Second Life, you want to buy the land, you have to pay subscriptions every month. You want to build things on it, it's very difficult. So there are some studies that show that as well. There's a cost, there's a high resource. You have to learn a lot of new things just to get those environments set up. So by using the Metaverse, which in our case, we custom built it. It's a custom build for education. There are tools that are used by teachers to kind of incorporate that environment that suits them best. So again, second point, which is some topics are just very hard to teach. Digital literacy, media literacy, sustainability. In some cases, the student might perceive that, well, they are better than the teachers in terms of media literacy, which some of you might agree. And there's a need for realistic, authentic environments and collective efficacy. We're not good in all of this, though. I mean, it will be something that we're trying to improve throughout this paper, throughout this study. We're trying to improve on how we can do collective efficacy even in the Metaverse. We don't really know how to do it. There are obviously a lot of really high-powered Metaverse solutions out there, like Sandbox. You can get the land, you can create some environments, you can create some interactions, but it doesn't prove that people can collaborate well. It doesn't prove that students can learn how to collaborate in a group, how to solve problems as a team, how to do 21st century learning. There's no one out there who can prove that they can do it in the Metaverse. So there's something that we're trying to do through research to create frameworks, to create evidence, to create models. And that's one of the studies we are trying to do as well, creating a conceptual model that we can integrate, not just on the Metaverse, but Metaverse to the classroom, so online to offline as well. Something that we don't really know how to do, but that's the purpose of research. So in this study, we have two groups. One is in China, in Chongqing. So we have only 8 undergraduate students. They were actually our pilot, really basic test studies. So they were just giving us feedback. Do they find it interesting? Do they like it? Do they think it's a stupid idea? So thankfully, no. Once that passed, we went on to 14 undergraduate students in Hong Kong, in Lingnan University. In this case, they were doing sustainability. Let me just show you how this application looks like directly. So you can kind of ignore the black stuff on the left and right, because that's my Unity app. So the main app is in the middle. It's actually a mobile application. It works on Android and iOS, so that it is possible to be used by anybody. So it's private as well. So only teachers and students with access to the password, which is created by the teacher as part of the module, can get access to it. So I get to choose an avatar. I've already chosen one. So we are doing clonings as well. So here I have the school scene that we have set up. It's a bit more laggy on when I have Zoom open. So it's loading a school scene. So in the first place, you can see here, I have a character. This is a school. I can run around and create and start quests. So I'm going to click on this guy. So I can click on them and I can get teleported to quest areas. Like this, where I have a science room. So I'm supposed to explore a science room. I can click on objects, and this is integrated. Oh, this needs to be in Chinese. 1 second. So it needs to be integrated. So it can be integrated with pictures, videos, images. And one of the main goals is to create a storyline. This specific topic here, content, is actually linked to information literacy around liquids. So they will ask questions, yes or no. When we complete the task, we can get information about the topic. So we try to deliver knowledge through the storylines and case studies. And then they are supposed to complete a certain number of tasks before they can move on. And basically, in a nutshell, and then we also have tools like this where we can set the quest. These are the authoring tools. But most of the time, it's the developer like me who creates it. But then the teachers or the designer or the researcher will be thinking about how do we incorporate the content that matches there. So these are some examples. Like for example, we have this description, exploring the tools, exploring the field, getting clues. We set who completes the tasks, and then so basically, and then we have a quest log in the tuck shop, in the science, in the field. So we're still working and improving this based on the feedback that we get from the research. But in a nutshell, this is kind of roughly how it works. Let me close this. Hopefully that's interesting. I'm going to go back here. So the main things here, the main features here is about the smart. We're trying to be smart. We script the robots, we script the NPCs, and we're incorporating more features. And going forward, we'll be incorporating some machine learning into these NPCs as well, whereby they can analyze the scene, analyze the environment, and they create challenges for the students who are as a part of it. That would be a completely different study by itself. We also generate social learning analytics. We know how many students did how many activities and what is the result of them answering correctly in the multiple choice questions. Something that we are also still working on. We are trying to understand to what extent, what type of analytics is useful for the teacher, but it's all going to differ based on the topic that everyone is teaching. So we use two frameworks here. On the left side, on the role level, we have an authentic learning framework by Farrell. So we mostly adapted it. So we only use 5 of them: performance, collaboration, challenges, knowledge transfer, and varying experiences. The most critical ones would be, does the environment create a level of challenge for the students? That's the third one. And then the 5th one, does the environment create more varying experiences for the students? Primarily because as a metaverse, you want to create multiple scenes. You want to have the students, put students in scenarios whereby they never thought that existed in the first place, and then they go through this experiential, exploratory type of learning environment. So, and we're trying to understand, do they like that, and how does that relate, into the school environment, into your curriculum. So that's one of it. Most of our studies will be using authentic learning as a framework. And then on the column level is where we try to understand how can we use this in a mobile learning environment. So RASE, R-A-S-E, is a mobile learning framework with resource, activity, support, and evaluation as the 4 key pillars. So resource being what are the support, what are the tools or support or content that they get to complete the tasks. And then in this case, they just have this app. That's all they have, and the content in the app. And then activities that they will have to click on the NPCs, the non-player characters in the app to accomplish tasks. And in each of these activities, we try to design it in a way whereby it matches all of these authentic learning frameworks. And if you want to see more of this, we have a paper that I can share with you as well. And then lastly, if they get information, how do they know whether how do we get support and evaluation? Hopefully through the content of others, which is this collaboration and feedback. We don't really know how to do it yet, something that we do want to improve on. And hopefully we can get some ideas to do more collaborations within students, so peer-to-peer. Maybe I think we'll do more of that in the next semester when we have more assessments in the application, for the application. So I'll skip this one. So this screenshots, actually you have already seen the actual app, but this version was actually in April. So we have kind of already got rid of it. So the interface now looks a bit more bold, a bit more colorful and suitable for youths. So this is some of the results and feedback that we got from the students. So we did a questionnaire, just 6 questions about authentic learning. Do you think that the challenges make you feel more motivated? Do you like varying experiences? Do you think it's more interesting for you as a student compared to traditional contemporary teaching methods? And also importantly, were they able to finish and complete the tasks? Because that was one of the things that we were afraid of. Like they didn't even know how to run because it's like a mobile game. So it's a joystick, and then they have to move the screen. So what if they didn't know how to use it? But thankfully, I mean, the university students were able to do it quite easily, quite well. On a side topic, we did try this out in a high school last week in Hong Kong. And the students were actually quite good at playing mobile games. So they were actually very familiar with how to do this. Obviously, out of maybe 5, one of them will be a little bit unfamiliar. Then we have to guide them. Okay, you have to press this and move. But we have that we have that kind of what do you call that? Like a landing page, like a game room lobby, rather the game lobby whereby we actually give them some more direction on how to click on the joystick. But anyway, so some of the students here, as you can see, they are already a VR chat player. They're already a virtual reality. They're familiar with VR, so they found it more relaxing. And they like the part whereby as an avatar, they don't know who they're talking to, kind of. And then they like to, they feel that they are more happy in this environment where they get to feel closer to the school. These comments came from students in China though. So I think at that time there was a big lockdown and they were all, didn't really get to do much face-to-face. The one that we quite liked the most was these ideas that they gave around gamification. They were like, okay, maybe you can create some scenarios whereby the guys are misleading each other and letting the users distinguish themselves. So most of our activities now, in terms of research and as well as implementation, we focus on creating storylines. For example, our upcoming geography or sustainability topics focuses on tasks like, for example, helping to save the fish. And then the students must click on like 10 different fishes in the ocean, and then to save them from maybe some plastic bottles or plastic or some pollution. And then as they click on those fishes, then there'll be some pop-ups that say, okay, this is the problem today, and this is what the world is doing. So we deliver the knowledge as the students are actually doing some form of active learning or some action. In some other cases, we are working on one for history, whereby the students will have to actually it's history in relation to technology. So in this case, the invention of penicillin. So the students will actually be interacting with nurses in the battlefield, and the nurses, and then they'll get the nurses to actually give the penicillin to soldiers. So that's like we try to create this active environment whereby the students will actually be a part of history instead of reading about history. So that's where we're trying to go with this. And this was actually coming, and these ideas actually came from these comments. They were like, can we help the NPC to do recycling? I thought that was a great idea. So we really like this research because the students were giving us ideas of how to make it even more interesting, because they are the ones who play games all the time. I mean, all of us do, but they might have more modern games that they play and what interests them. either one on one other segment. So we actually group a bunch of those. We group the comments into the categories, right? So realism was one of them as well. So aside from gamification and engagement. So realism, he would like to continue to stay in the scenes even after completing them. Was quite interesting. We were like, you're already done. Why are you still running around? And then they were still playing. They were still running around. I don't know why. And then on the bottom right, they say that they can see the actual site buildings, furniture, which you couldn't see in a contemporary classroom. So overall, our main theme here will be about the active learning, creating storylines, creating storylines and dialogue. One of the most important things that we're doing here. And just to, as a one side note, one point rather, is that most of these activities will be done in the classroom, synchronously. So we are most likely converting 20 minutes of your class that was perhaps done in a lecture format into a game format. We are still trying to figure out whether there's a way whereby the teachers can play the game with the students. I think that would be amazing if maybe the teacher becomes the bad guy, right, in the story, and then they create some misinformation or some wrong news or some stuff. We don't know how to do it yet. Hopefully, we'll throughout the process of research, we find out how to do it, and through the ideas of people that we meet. That's the main thing. The active learning, we think in this case, we are maybe able to redefine it a little bit, because active learning used to be just ask more questions, right, in the classroom, have more discussions. But now at active learning, we want to kind of place students in the story. We want to place them in history. We want to place them in the books instead of just reading about it. So that's where we're going with this. Maybe the only other thing that is really quite interesting is so authentic learning, creating real world issues. We can even create, ideally, some cases that we want to create is where the actual case studies become in the environment. They actually get to be replicated in the environment. So that's something that we want to do as well, which is very much linked to history in this case. And then the rest of it, I think, is we're still working on it. So, for example, the students report that giving the students a role as a co-creator in the space, it would be interesting. So, in this case, having the students run around, pick up objects to actually create a story, to direct where they're, doing their choosing the path that they want to take. Almost in a, I was going to say self-directed, but that's a different meaning. Kind of self-direct their scene, their experience will also be really cool. And the last part is about this decreasing their anxiety about making mistakes, because it's an avatar-based metaverse environment. So this psychological safety is something that we think will be interesting as well. Although the metaverse is supposed to be open, but we're kind of semi-open. So something that we want to explore and do deeper on. I think that's beneficial for language learning, for students who might be afraid to usually speak up, but in this environment, avatars, and nobody else gets to hear, although we can do audio recordings, will be where we are going with this. So overall, why Metaverse? Three key things. Number one is open world. Most of the time, we're trying to interconnect multiple scenes together and make it more interesting for students to run around and suddenly teleport from one place to the other. Most of the games out there today is just one space, and the developers will charge you a lot of money just to keep on creating new ones. For us, we just want to plug in. Number two, we have authoring features. Most metaverses have authoring tools where the users can create their own content, create their own spaces. The metaverses will charge you for one space, but on our side, what we try to do is we have one space, but we can have multiple users, teachers actually just plug in. So we could have one NPC being used by like 100 teachers with different content, making it easy for schools, institutions, teachers to just plug in. And lastly, this hyper social connectivity. So with more students in the same scene, even better across institutions, they can collaborate and talk to each other. We could have we did one trial last year we are planning for one rather this year, Singapore with Hong Kong and in Japan as well. So hopefully we can do cross collaboration, cross institution, cross country collaborations. And next step from the pilot, which is where we're going, is to have more quantitative. We want to do more validity and reliability, because the quotes that you saw just now were all volunteers. So most likely they already love games. So we want to know more about people, like bigger study with wider classes, and what do they think have more percentages in there. Correlation is where we want to go there. And that's about it. So I'm Daniel. We look for collaborations as well. We want to apply for grants as well to do more research, bigger grants, do more bigger projects, create more scenes. And this is Paulina's email, and she does mostly science-related studies, sustainability and sustainable development. So hopefully that was interesting and open for any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. So we've got 2 questions here. Let's look at the first one. So it says here, is there a live chat like Second Life or Learn Bright where participants and teachers can actually have a dialogue using the voice function or the video function? I think you sort of addressed that, but perhaps you can talk about the challenges, or is it going to happen very soon?
Okay, number one, I think we can easily do we don't yet have a chat. We can easily do a chat, but no teacher has ever told me that they want to chat. So I haven't done it because no one's ever need. Because the biggest problem always has been that the teachers kind of don't want to teach. So kind of they don't want to spend too much time to prepare. They want to be able to focus on the doubt, focus on the interaction and discussion with the students. So in this case, and even in this case, as I was saying just now, a lot of times we do our activities in the classroom, synchronous. So if it's synchronously in a classroom, there's not much need to have a chat. So haven't had a need for it, but I do have one other scenario in a high school whereby the vice principal was saying, actually they want to create a more community-based learning, and they're thinking of a way whereby students can interact with each other, even kind of in a metaverse environment. So I might be doing a chat, but I think community-based learning will not just be about a chat. It will be a bit more than that. So something that I don't yet know how to do.
Thank you, Daniel. So because we are running out of time, let's
yes.
take a look at another question from another participant. So it says here, how do we address the gap transition? Because eventually students have to leave the virtual environment. So they need to communicate with others in person for different purposes. So how do we address the gap or transition?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we are fully trying to replace replace this whole mode. We do want to do a metaverse 2 classroom, like M2C, something that Paulina and I was just brainstorming on. So we do want to have a way whereby students for a 1 hour class, 20 minutes is done in this game. And then there'll be enough analytics and information that the teacher can use that to facilitate an in-class discussion. Like, hey, you mentioned this, what do you think? Can you talk about it a bit more? And still like a flipped classroom, we still want to try to do that, and maybe some other environments and scenes that are difficult to do in a classroom, we just want to put them there. So at this point we aren't yet focused, or we have not yet seen the gap and transition. Maybe when we see it, we'll try to solve it.